I'm about as real as they come.
All my beats tailored by Joe. House Digital.
Maserati Rick in Detroit, convertible bird in Miami. Graduated summa cum laude, strip club made a tsunami. Carlton Hines with the ball game, Grateful Edmonds with the snowflakes, Craig Pettis in the M-Town, Sal Magluta with the boat game, Falcone with the cocaine, like Freeway Ricky with the plug game, like Monster Cody in South Central, Larry Davis from close range.
It was the biggest bust anywhere, anytime. 13 tons of cocaine from the jungles of Colombia, worth $1.2 billion in the streets of the United States.
Ain't nobody had what they had. Ain't nobody had it for the numbers they had. So you ain't had no fucking goods to bust it down. Like, they had what you needed for way cheaper than what you would have ever got.
These young guys deciding that they were going to take over the drug business in the city. They were going to supply cocaine to all these little drug gangs out on the corners.
Once we flooded that neighborhood with the stuff that we was getting, and the quality, not the quantity, but the quality that it was, it's like he knocked everybody else out the box.
Everybody getting money. Ain't nobody really jealous of nobody. Everybody having a nice time.
With their newfound money, they were making money hand over fist, so they were buying flashy cars, Mercedes, Jeeps.
JBM was a lifestyle. You know what I mean? People say Junior Black Mafia, but you know what I mean? Another take on that was just blowing money.
Buck was one of them special type of dudes, you know what I mean? People see he had qualities and potential to be, you know, a great leader of men.
His name was Raymond, you know, Lil Bucky. You know, they even went Lil Bucky in box and Lil Bucky getting it.
In '89, that's when everything like really started to, you know, escalate.
According to the Daily News, a lot of niggas got punished, man, you know, for being out of order.
It wasn't a climate where you can get bread comfortable. Like niggas was making niggas take cars back because your car looked like mine.
You talking about trees and energy, you talking about dealing with a lot of women, guys that's doing a little bit more successful with that particular trade.
Cats envy Buck, you know what I'm saying? They just envy Buck, you know. People wait, you know what I'm saying, wait for Buck to pull up and get out of his car just to see what he got on that day.
I used to always tell him to get out of there. Because half of them cats were just around him for what he can do for them. They ain't really care about him.
When Bucky Davis died, Rodney Carson took over his organization in Southwest Philadelphia. But soon he was targeted by law enforcement.
Once he went to jail, though, he got a taste of jail and realized what jail was like. You know, that's when he really told the people come here. He's going to testify on this.
Yeah, we back. It's your boy Papa like Mob Ties. We headed back to Philly with it. And I'm going to cover an organization I've been getting a lot of requests to cover. I covered what some would say was the forefathers of an organization that they branched off of a few episodes back. And I'm talking about none other than the infamous Junior Black Mafia, or just blowing money, whatever you want to call them. There was some real live hitters in the city. They was well connected with some of the connections that they had from Philly's Black Mafia, because some of the members from JBM were descendants of the Black Mafia. So instead of going through and giving you my take on how I feel about the situation, I'm just going to break down a list of the crimes that they're allegedly involved in. And the organization, I want to say they span from 1985 to 1992, if I'm not mistaken. And in January of 95, Aaron A.J. Jones started the Junior Black Mafia, or Just Blowing Money organization in North Philly. So all my niggas from North Philly, y'all niggas get in the comment box, let it be known. Now, Aaron Jones is going to be somebody that a lot of people would say was the leader of Junior Black Mafia, but I seen elsewhere where it looks like they had different leaders. That's why so many of them that are almost famous or notorious from the organization. It might be some people that are just as well known as AJ Jones as far as with the street shit, because of how the organization was structured. So it was started in January of 1985. Now in March of that same year, they allegedly got in, they allegedly got into a shootout in front of Philadelphia City Hall with a rival drug kingpin named Craig Haynes, who was supposed to have been doing his thing around the same time in that era. Now, in March of 1988, a rival dealer from the organization, Albert Reagan, was gunned down. A few days after that, on March the 2nd, a real close associate of Albert Reagan named Dennis Caldwell was gunned down or killed. Not too long after that, on April 9th in 1988, another one of his close associates, Brock White, was killed. And to top that off, about 2 weeks later, on April 16th in 1988, another one of his close associates was murdered, and that's going to be James Tate. So in a span of less than a month, so from March the 26th, 1988 till April 16th, 1988, that's going to be Albert Reagan and 3 of his close associates were murdered. Now, on July the 12th, 1988, another gangster from Philly that went by the name of Mark Lisby was killed by a junior mafia enforcer by the name of Big Tone. It's going to be Anthony Reed, and that was over a little drug debt of $150. So that should tell you the level of shit that these niggas was on at that time in 1988. So on November 15th of that same year, 1988, Craig Haynes, the dealer that they got into the shootout with at City Hall, who was shot again, and he refused to identify the shooters that assaulted him to the police. So he was sticking with the code. I guess he was going to pay, it was going to be street justice, how he was looking at it. So on December of that same year, 1988, which was a real live year for them, a few members of the JBM were arrested on state drug conspiracy charges, and those members were Tracy Mason, James Gaines, William McNeil, David Shabazz, and Julius Pickard. So that leads into 1988. After all of that stuff, 1989, excuse me. After all of that stuff happened in 1988. Now, in 1989, I want to say they got more turf when an affiliate of Junior Black Mafia, Big Roachy, his name was Richard Nelson, but he went by the name of Big Roachy. He was sent to prison, and his brother and business partner, Little Roachy, which was Wayne Nelson, was killed. So their turf pretty much expanded after that because it was an opening in the game. Now, on January the 2nd of 1989, a lieutenant in the gang, Timmy Kent, aka King of Quill, was killed. And a few days after that, on January 6, 1989, another lieutenant was indicted following a series of raids on their stash house. I want to say that member that was indicted was Big D. In February of that same year, on February 2nd, 1989, two of Craig Haynes, the guy that they was going back and forth at it with the shootouts, two of his enforcers, twin brothers Guy and Gail Matthews, were indicted for murdering a JBM member by the name of James Suswell. A day after that, Haynes, a lieutenant in his organization that went by the name of Terrence Gross, this was a lieutenant in Craig Haynes' organization, he was shot, but he survived the shooting. Now, a couple weeks later, on February 21st of 1989, a rival drug dealer from the Junior Black Mafia that went by the name of Richard Isaac was paralyzed and left by the waist. He was paralyzed from the waist down after he was shot 10 times by a JBM hit team. So that leads to March 13th in 1989, when a soldier in JBM, Neil Wilkerson, was shot to death when he was ambushed by a JBM enforcer, Big Tone, and his driver, Kevin Bowman. Now, Wilkins' partner in crime, and there was also a JBM lieutenant, Hickey Mo, Darrell Woods, he was also paralyzed from the waist down in that same attack. Now, Woods and Wilkerson, they were targeted by the JBM bosses for the belief that the pair might turn state on them or might turn into government informants. So they try to eliminate them from jump. Now, on March 18th in 1989, this is going to be that same year, a teenager was shot in a drive-by by Big Tone. And that was after Walters hit Reed's car with a snowball. So it's like, that's the niggas was wild, man. A teenager hit Big Tone's car with a snowball, and he killed him after that. So a few days later, this shit is just wild. A few days later, or a couple weeks later, on March 26, 1989, a lieutenant in JBM in West Philly, Reggie Reidenberg, he was killed after he was being suspected by Junior Black Mafia superiors from skimming the till. So they thought my man was putting his hand in a cookie jar. So, you know, they did what they had to do. Now, in June, on the 29th in 1989, Anthony Fletcher went by the name of Two Guns and Eric Hurst, they were ambushed by members of the Haynes organization. Fletcher was wounded and Hurst was killed in that ambush. So they was going back and forth at it with that organization from the beginning. Now, in July of 1989, an enforcer for the JBM mob named Dirty Black and his crew, they opened fire on a South Philly street corner. They wounded an innocent woman and they killed the innocent man in an effort to dissuade non-Junior Black Mafia affiliates from working in the area. So pretty much marking a turf, if you know what it is in the streets. Now, August of 1989, another lieutenant, Donnie Branch, was shot to death in an attempt where they tried to kill Aaron Jones. And that was another hit that was ordered by the Haynes organization, allegedly. Now, Jones and the second in command for the Junior Black Mafia, which was a guy by the name of Magic, Sam Brown, they were reindicted for the attempted murder of Richard Isaac. They were first charged in February, immediately after the shooting, but the charges was eventually dropped back then. So they was arrested and jailed, but the charges was dropped while they were in jail. And at that time, Bucky, which is another well-known member of the Junior Black Mafia, a guy by the name of Leroy Davis, he was the acting boss while Aaron Jones was away. So on September 16th, 1989, Anthony Anderson, one of the suspected shooters in the Branch murder, was found killed. A few days later, almost a little bit more than a week, on September 21st, 1989, a JBM founding member, Goldie, which was a guy by the name of Mark Casey, he dies of a prison drug overdose. So it's getting real with the gang. It's the back and forth stuff is starting to take a toll on them. During that same week, or a few days after that, on the 25th of September, Big Tone was convicted on a weapons charge. In 1989, November, on the 3rd, Aaron Jones stabbed the inmate in the Philadelphia detention center. So it was just getting haywire for them, for real. Which kind of transitions into 1990. On April 20th, when Big Tone and Black were found guilty for the murder of Phil Fresh in that ambush shooting, where they murdered Phil Fresh Wilkerson and they paralyzed the other guy that was with him. Now, the day after that, an enforcer for the gang, Big Basil, that's going to be Leonard Patterson, he was convicted of the hit on James Tate. So the next month, in May, on the 14th of 1990, that Bucky, who was still the acting boss of the Junior Black Mafia, he was shot to death on the front porch of a row house in West Philly by his successor in the gang, Brian Moochie Thornton. So it was starting to get some internal gang conflict. So after the hit on Bucky in June of that same year, on the 10th, while being the acting boss of the Junior Black Mafia, Moochie and his driver, Little Hawk, was a guy by the name of Eric Watkins. They got into a road rage incident with a guy by the name of Greg Jackson in North Philly. Now, that led to Little Hawk pistol whipping and executing Greg Jackson in front of his wife, on the orders of Moochie. So that was some wild shit. Now, in that same year, on August the 18th, a lieutenant in Junior Black Mafia, a guy by the name of Bruce Kennedy, he was shot and killed. I want to say it was behind a counter somewhere in West Philly, for messing with one of Aaron Jones's girls while he was locked up. So it started to get real messy towards the end. Now, on October the 2nd of 1991, which is a few months later, but a new year, the indictment against the entire Junior Black Mafia organization was released. And I want to say it indicted Aaron Jones and 24 others. So it was 25 people in the indictment. And on April the 23rd, of 1992, Aaron Jones and Moochie, they were convicted in that racketeering case. Aaron Jones was convicted of killing Kennedy and the murder over the girl. And he was sentenced to death in 1993 in January at the sentencing. So I want to say he's still on death row. A lot of the organizations died. A lot of the members of the organizations died. A lot of them are behind bars with that indictment that was released on them. So that was just a little insight into the gang known as the Junior Black Mafia, or just blowing money fast. It's your boy Popalot. Mob ties.